I was going to say we're going to start in a subcommittee, but we're going to go ahead and establish a quorum. Barb, will you please call the roll?
Senators Crawford,
Here.
Gregory, Brown, Huff, McCreary, Mosley, Trent.
We do have a quorum. We're going to start with Representative Amato's House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103. Representative, when you're ready, if you'll come forward.
Right.
Representative, go right ahead. Sorry.
Okay, that's quite all right. For the record, I'm Phil Amato. I represent District 113 in Jefferson County. I'm here today to present House Bill 2103, and I appreciate the opportunity. The bill basically has two elements in it. I got together with the Recorder of Deeds across the state. I must have had 20 of them stuffed in my office, and the bankers, and we have decided to keep someone from stealing your house. The first line of defense is the notary. So we've taken the notary, any fraudulent notary, from a misdemeanor to a felony. And then the other provision of the bill is if by chance something happens like happened in St. Louis County where somebody stole that gentleman's house and it was tied up in the courts for months and it cost him thousands in attorney fees, you get before a judge within 20 days. That's basically the two basic elements of the bill.
Okay, questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for that. First up, in favor of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103. Just a reminder to everybody to fill out a witness form when you come forward.
Chair, members of the committee, Jessica Petrie here for the Recorders Association of Missouri, going on record in support of this bill. Like Representative Amato said, this language was born out of a multi-month effort over the summer and fall trying to address property fraud. Recorders see that on the front line. The vast majority of counties across the state have voluntary electronic systems where people can sign up for Deed Alert and learn about issues that might be coming so they can be proactive. But we knew there was more that we needed to do to address this. We certainly don't think there is any silver bullet to completely prevent fraud. We wish there was, but none exists. But we believe this is some low-hanging fruit in statute to better address these issues. So just to highlight a few things that are in the bill, it requires recorders of deeds to put some signage in their office around filing false deeds being a felony. This was based off of the hospital workplace violence language that is also moving through the legislature, trying to make it a little bit easier to prosecute these crimes. It also clarifies the judicial process. So if there is a fraudulent filing on your property, it makes it very clear that any property owner can go through the expedited judicial process that's already in law. And then, like Representative Amato alluded to, we were pretty horrified to find that penalties for notary misconduct were, $500 and less than a year in prison at a maximum, when you could be the linchpin in a financial transaction that is costing someone their home and tens of thousands of dollars of legal bills. So this takes those up to a Class E felony and specifically criminalizes attempting to obtain a notary seal if you are not, in fact, a notary. If you're not a notary, you have no business obtaining a seal in the first place. It does nothing to notaries who are just doing their job. If you make a mistake, this bill is not going to touch you. But if you are knowingly committing a fraudulent notarial certificate, this raises the bar for the penalties on that. So happy to take any questions, but we really appreciate Representative Amato's work on this.
Questions for the witness? I will say this is a big problem. Well, hopefully, it is a problem, and it's kind of hard to figure out a solution because
Yes.
I've kind of been in on some of those conversations. It's hard to figure out a way to stop it, but I think this will definitely help. So,
It is exceptionally difficult, and to your point, finding something that doesn't delay legitimate real estate transactions, but
Yes.
also makes a difference in fraud is a really hard balance
It's very
to
hard to
strike.
thread that needle, that's for sure. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, next up in favor of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Emily Lewis on behalf of the Missouri Bankers Association here in support of the bill. I certainly appreciate the work of the sponsor and all of the other stakeholders who were involved in the conversations to get to a point where we have legislation that we think solves quite a few problems without creating new unintended consequences. Would just echo the comments of the Recorders Association. We believe this will go a long way to prevent bad actors or appropriately penalize bad actors in this space.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next up in favor.
How are you? Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienhoff, State Public Advocate. First of all, I want to go on record. I submitted my online form on the Senate, I was going to say portal. There you go. But I'm losing my words this morning, and Senator Hupp is helped me out. Thanks. Did you receive my online testimony and support?
I have not seen that, but I've been a little busy too, so in
I
full
did
disclosure.
I did submit it yesterday. But this HCS HB2103, I testified in the House on the same bill. This is a pet peeve of mine. I think that the obligation of government is first and foremost is public safety and standing up for the elderly, vulnerable, and it can even happen to an average Missourian who owns real estate or some property across our state. We need to make sure that all Missouri residents are protected. Notary fraudulent or committing fraud through a notary by that notary is very serious offense. And I agree that it should be moved up to a felony. As a matter of fact, instead of a felony E, I think it should be moved to a felony D. Unfortunately, fraud is going to keep being reinvented. There's going to be schemes and scams, especially with the internet and AI. It's going to keep coming, and we're going to have to get law enforcement and prosecutors to stay ahead and stay ahead of the curve to protect Missourians. I also agree that if somebody is a victim of this fraud from a notary and their property is taken away from them by some robber, some felon, that they should be able to get before a judge to stop this insaneness within 20 days. We need, as a Missouri, to send a clear and concise message across our state and across our nation that fraud, deception, and stealing will not be allowed in our Missouri. Thank you, Representative Amato, for bringing forth this bill. This is a no-brainer. There should be no controversy. This should be a bipartisan bill, and I don't see any opposition or anyone who could be opposed to this type of bill. Let's get this past the Senate and on to the governor's desk. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Anyone else in favor of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103? Seeing none. Anyone to testify in opposition to House Bill 2103? Seeing none. Anyone for informational purposes only? Please come forward. Just a reminder to fill out the witness form.
Yes,
Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Dr. Vikram Lockenpal. I'm a Legislative Policy Fellow at Most Policy Initiative. We provide nonpartisan research services to the Missouri Legislature at the request of lawmakers. Today I'm here to testify for informational purposes about House Bill 2103 from our science note on real estate title fraud. Title fraud, also known as deed theft, is when a person or entity falsely claims ownership of a property. A forger creates a fake deed, which is notarized and filed at the county records office. This allows the owner of the fake deed to sell the property or use it as collateral without the real owner's knowledge. If the property is sold, the owner of the fake deed receives the profits from the sale, while the buyer and the real owner are left in dispute. General real estate fraud comprises about 1% of total complaints and financial losses in 2024. The annual number of real estate fraud complaints has declined from about 13,500 in 2020 to just over 9,000 in 2024. Title fraud often targets unused property. A 2025 survey of real estate professionals found that 62% of recently reported title fraud involved vacant land, and in contrast, 12% occurred on owner-occupied property, and another 2% of cases involved residential rental land. These reported cases of title fraud were more common in urban and suburban areas compared to small towns. States have taken different measures to prevent title fraud. 4 states require notaries public to report missing stamps to prevent fraudulent notarizations. 5 states require photo identification when someone files real estate documents at the county records department. 10 states empower county recorders to intervene if they suspect a fraudulent document has been filed. 2 states require deed fraud training for real estate professionals like county recorders and real estate brokers. As mentioned, in some counties, property owners can sign up for notifications from their recorder of deeds when something has been filed on their property. 4 states require every county records office to provide this opt-in service for owners, and many counties in other states also provide this service. Another proposed measure to prevent title fraud is to allow property owners to freeze their title, similar to a credit freeze. No state has taken this measure, but it has been implemented in Leavenworth County, Kansas, and in Platte County, Missouri. These counties allow property owners to freeze their deeds by recording the owner's biometric information, which is designed to be more secure than government-issued identification. Once the freeze is in place, the property's title cannot be transferred or altered without the owner's in-person approval. Thank you for your time. I have copies of this science note if anyone on the committee would like more information, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I did see your email. I just didn't have time to respond to it, but thank you for being here today. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else for informational purposes only for House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103? If you want to leave that, we can see that the committee gets it. Yes. Informational purposes, seeing none. Representative, any final comments?
Just thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative. I might just make a note, if you or just make a comment, if you haven't signed up with your recorder to get that free service, I suggest you do what we did, just so you know if something's going on with your property. So it's a great idea. Okay, that concludes the hearing on House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2103. We'll now move to House Bill 2636, Representative Owen. You can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, I am Bill Owen, State Representative, 131st Legislative District of Northern and Western Greene County. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present House Bill 2636, which is more commonly referred to as the Mortgage Modification Act. It's something that you all are very familiar with. You passed it over to us on the House side. This is the companion bill coming back, minus what you've added as far as the Residential Sale Leaseback Protection Act, which we saw as very favorable when we had it over in the House. And if you all decide you want to put it on in the Senate, I think we'd be very interested in that as well. I'm not going to take a lot of time because we know this so well, and Madam Chairman, you having been in the business like we would see this on a regular basis where someone would have a mortgage, we wanted to make some changes, but somebody had a second behind us. And so, you get a hold of the person that's holding the second and you say, we're going to modify, we need you to sign a subordination agreement. Well, we'll have to do our due diligence. And then time goes on and on and on. and the customer gets frustrated because they don't understand why you can't go ahead and make the adjustments to their loan, because you've got another party that's trying to do their due diligence behind it. And this is just a win-win across. It's a consumer win. It is a win for the industry. I really don't see anything negative in this. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop and open myself up to any questions if you have any.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. First up, in favor of House Bill 2636.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, David Kent, registered lobbyist with the Missouri Bankers Association. Appreciate Representative Owen for carrying this bill, and Senator Crawford, thank you for carrying the companion bill. Representative Owen, I think, summed up the intent behind the bill very clearly, and we just want to appreciate the hearing and want to put our full support behind the legislation. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the witness? Thank you. Next
Thanks.
up, in favor?
You bet.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Heath Clarkston here on behalf of the Mortgage Bankers Association of Missouri in full support.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, in favor? Seeing none, anyone here to testify in opposition to House Bill 2636?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Arne C. A.C. Dinoff, State Public Advocate. Madam Chairwoman, I have to be consistent in my testimony. As you know, I opposed your bill, which is a companion bill, on the same issue. I opposed this bill over in the House. I believe it was Financial Institutions Committee. And I have to oppose it again today. This deals with Uniform Mortgages Modification Act. And it involves basically signatures. Gotcha. I do not trust the bill as it was presented by the mortgage industry and brought to the two sponsors, both in the House and the Senate. I have problems that this supersedes the federal law, the Federal Electronic Signature and Global Act. And when somebody brings it from special interest, a lot of red flags go up. It means either profitabilities, it means dollar signs. Something just doesn't pass the sniff test for me in this issue. For those reasons, I cannot support this bill, and I'm opposed to HB 2636. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in opposition to House Bill 2636. Seeing none, anyone here for informational purposes only for House Bill 2636? Seeing none, Representative, any final comments?
No, I just appreciate your time, and Madam Chairwoman, if I don't get to testify in front of you again, thank you for what you've done for the state of Missouri over these 16 years.
Thank you, Representative.
Hey. I would say to the senator from Greene, if I was in front of his committee, I would have probably said the same thing.
Thank you, Representative. I would like to, since we have already passed this bill on the Senate floor 32-0, I would like to go into executive session and vote on this bill now. I do want to make the committee aware, Senator McCreary put the amendment with the lease back provision on there, which is a great consumer protection. What I plan to do is drop a sub when we get this to the House, or Senate floor, and put that on there. So I just kind of want to make everybody aware, full disclosure, what my plans are. So I would make a motion that we go into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. And the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And I move that, let's see, I move that we take up House Bill 2636. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Obviously, this is the bill that we just heard, Representative Owen's Mortgage Modification Act, and I move that we vote House Bill 2636 out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Barb, please call the roll.
Senators Crawford.
Aye.
Gregory. Brown. Huff. McCreary. Mosley. Trent. 6. Yep.
By your vote of 6-0, you have passed House Bill 2636. I make a motion we go out of executive session. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're out of executive session and back into regular session. The next bill we will hear is Representative Stinnett's House Committee Substitute for House Bill 3010. Representative, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I appreciate your time today hearing House Bill 3010. This is not something new to your committee. You have heard Senator Ben Brown's version of this prior authorization reform bill. Quickly, to hit the high points of this bill, it really looks at prioritizing giving a benefit to our quality health care providers that are doing the important work every day in all of our communities. It does not remove prior authorization completely. It allows those that are achieving 90% approval on prior authorizations to no longer have to provide those or complete that prior authorization process for a time frame. It allows for look-back periods and audits for the insurance companies to maintain that, what we call gold carding, if they've achieved that status. We added this year a component that the Department of Commerce and Insurance was interested in, that is the API portion, and that allows the department to be able to gather information on prior authorization, how many prior authorization requests are submitted, how many are approved, and they can take a look at that information and kind of see what's happening on that front. I think that's important, an important addition that we made this year. But rather than continue to go through the pieces that I know you've already seen and looked at in the Senator's bill and in prior years, I want to speak to kind of a specific example that I actually experienced today. Think of a child who lives in a rural community who's accessing speech therapy in their home community. They are seeing a provider who is trying their best but doesn't have the skill set that that child needs. So that child decides that they want to go to a different provider in another community close to them that's a little bit bigger population center and has more specialists. That child is denied access through prior authorization to that care in that other community simply because that parent chose to continue care with the other provider while waiting to get in with the new provider and completing that prior authorization period. So to accomplish this, because that prior authorization was denied, the parents chose to discontinue services with the rural health care provider in an effort to get that approval. They were again subsequently denied and have still yet, 4 months later, gotten any care for their child because of those denials. And today we're involved in a hearing process with DSS to try and alleviate that. These things shouldn't happen to children in our communities that are trying to access care. So as you hear testimony on this bill, you're going to hear from hospitals, and many times we're talking about hospitals when we're talking about healthcare in this building, but what I want you to think about is the community providers that are in your everyday lives that are serving your everyday needs as a healthcare provider. Not only your big hospitals deal with this, but your small providers in urban, suburban, and rural communities really struggle to keep up with the demands of prior authorization, and it yields significant impacts on patients, including delays in care and delays in access to the things that are sometimes life-saving pieces of their care. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Senator McCreary.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
I feel like we've heard this bill now for several years. Can you just share what negotiations or what kind of conversations have happened both during session but also in the interim? I'm trying to understand why we kind of I feel like we're in this Groundhog Day kind of scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And my bill's not unique in that. There are a lot of our bills that have that situation. 4 years I filed this bill. I think it was probably filed before I was here, but I've worked diligently on this bill. I've worked with both sides on this issue. I am not somebody who's interested in just passing a one-sided bill. I want to make sure it works for both the insurance industry and for providers. We have gotten to some stoppage points, and I do think we have some negotiation going on the pieces that have been the most challenging, which is the exclusion of pharmacy and the percentage that we have in the bill. Last year, we were able to get it through the House with only 4 no votes, so I think it was 146-ish to 4. We were next up, or very close up, on the Senate calendar at the end of session. This year, we got a vote with only 1 no vote on the House floor, so a very strongly supported bill with a lot of negotiation that's gone into it. And in the interim, those conversations with the department, I think, were really interesting and important as well. That was a brand new part that we added this year that they felt like gave them more teeth in the process when they're dealing with complaints, to allow them to really look at what's going on with prior authorizations from a data perspective. Thank you.
Further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you. And do you need to go, are you still?
I'm okay right now.
Okay, all right. If you run out of here, we'll know you need to go vote.
Yep.
First up in favor of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 3010.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Rob Monses on behalf of the Missouri Hospital Association. I don't want to belabor this. I know the committee has heard this before. I've got a document here that I can leave for the committee if you haven't seen it already. But essentially, we're down to the point, we've made a number of changes on the back of this that address a lot of concerns that were brought by the insurance industry. So we have tried very, very diligently, and appreciate the sponsor's been working very diligently with us to try to address concerns that they've raised, and I think have demonstrated a flexibility there. We are trying hard to maintain the 90% level. And the reason for that, 5 out of the 6 states that have passed meaningful reforms on prior authorization have done it at 90%. One state recently did pass it at 93%. But the reality of it is that the smaller, more independent you are, so think if you're a smaller hospital, if you're an independent physician or a smaller physician practice, you can imagine the types of resources you have available to you in that situation. It's more difficult to work through the kind of bureaucracy that gets thrown at those practices, those hospitals, by the insurance carriers. So the closer we get to 90%, the more meaningful this reform is going to be. That's why we think that is important. We do have flexibility on that, and we've been clear, I think, with the insurance industry that we have some flexibility, but we're just not, I think they're at 93% is what we've been told, and we think that is just a little bit too far. So we're trying really hard to get this over the goal line. It has been, I think, 6 years. I think Senator White introduced this in the last year that Bill White was a member of the Senate. So it's been an issue a long time. I very much appreciate the committee's time and the chair's time, and thank you for the opportunity.
Questions for the witness? Senator Trent.
You kind of anticipated my question a little bit around whether or not 93 was an acceptable number. What are the 5 states that passed it at 90 recently that you mentioned?
So the 5 states, as I recall, West Virginia, I think Indiana.
And that's okay if you
I
don't have that
don't
off
have
the
them
top
right in
of
front of
your
me,
head.
Senator. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's kind of a technical question. I'll be happy to circle around with you afterwards. I'd just be curious as to which of those states that it were that adopted it at that level. But I gather from your testimony today that you still feel that 93% is not an acceptable amount.
again, just to reiterate, the closer to 90%, the more meaningful for people. I get that that's, we're getting longer into session, that puts pressure there. But 93, we think it leaves too many people. There's very little data that we have available to us today. That's why that API language is important. The data we do have from Medicare Advantage plans, which is a federal a subset of data, shows that once you get into the 92, 93%, you leave a ton of providers off the table. I've been told by our larger members that they're fine at 93. They're fine, at some level above that. But we're trying hard to not leave people out. We don't want to leave those smaller providers out.
What were the original counter offers? As I recall, it was like at 95% or something?
So last year, for a short time, 95 was on some of the insurance documents that I recall. And I think once there was a bill that was presented on 93, my sense is, now we admittedly, we didn't get very far in the discussions last year. So
Sure.
We've gotten a lot further this year, which I'm very appreciative of. There's been a lot of engagement, but we're really hoping to get time on the floor to kind of flesh it out.
Well, you may indeed get your time on the floor, but it does seem like one side has moved, and there hasn't been movement on the other side. So,
Well, we
at
have
least on
made-
this issue.
We've made
I know you've moved on a lot of other things.
13 or 14 other very substantive
Yeah.
changes. So, yeah, this one piece we're trying to
It does seem to be the sticking point. So,
understand.
yeah, thank you. I
Yeah.
I appreciate your question or your answers to the questions, and appreciate how hard you have worked on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jacob Scott with the Missouri State Medical Association, the Missouri Association of Osteopathic Physicians and Surgeons, the Missouri Gastroenterological Society, and the Missouri State Orthopedic Association, all on record in support of the legislation. I don't have much to add. I thank my sponsor here and then the hospital folks for providing great testimony. The only thing that I would say is we are interested in this legislation because we believe that it will put physicians spending more time with patients and less time with paperwork. So I'll just leave you with that.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next up in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, David McCracken here on behalf of Leading Age Missouri. Leading Age Missouri is an association of nonprofit, mostly nonprofit nursing homes, long-term care facilities, independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, the entire spectrum of care. You may think of us when you think of things called CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. Friendship Village would be a great example of that, where they have sort of all of these levels of care on one campus. Past years, we have not weighed in on this. It has come up this year at some of the board meetings we've had. Some of our larger members think that they would be able to achieve this threshold. It would really help them streamline some of the care they deliver, and we just want to go on record in support.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Organ Schlemmer on behalf of Washington University. When I sent this out, I got many comments back on why they saw this as a needed law. But there was one central theme, and that is by the time a person gets to Washington University, the physicians have a very definite course of treatment, drug plan, and healthcare services that they need. The idea that when they put these services into the authorization for the healthcare company and an algorithm looks at those and spits those back, they're not at Washington University because they haven't already tried all the different various alternative therapies and drugs and so on and so forth. They need a very special, specific type of care, and their care needs to be done, for the most part, at that moment. They have some delays up to 6 months, which really harms patients. As you can imagine, patients don't have the ability to simply pay cash for a lot of these services. They have to wait for their healthcare company to approve these services, and waiting 6 months when you're at that point in your course of treatment is too long of a delay, and we need some better way to adjudicate these claims and get them moving much faster.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you
you.
for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Madam Chair, David Winton here on behalf of BJC, Cox Hospital, Rankin Jordan, Pediatric Bridge Hospital, National Association of Social Workers, the Reach Foundation. I want to go on record in support of the legislation, thank the sponsor, and thank the committee for hearing it. Just for the edification of the committee, we hire at BJC almost 300 people that do nothing but this process of prior authorization. And the way that I contextualize this is our hospital consistently is approved either through appeal or immediately, somewhere between 94 and 96% of the time, depending on who they are. So we are going through this process for 100% of the claims under prior authorization for a potential error rate of 4 to 5%. And that is an unbelievable amount of money that we spend on just doing that. And from our perspective, it is very routine for us to bill for a service and to be denied payment. I'm not saying they do that erroneously or anything like that, but this is a normal part of what we do, and we have to defend those bills to the insurance carriers. They're extremely sophisticated, the way you catch it. And what we would say is this is a way to start shifting some of the burden that's on healthcare providers today back to the insurance carriers that are really pretty well equipped to know when they should pay a claim and when they shouldn't. And we're really comfortable with that risk. And so this is one of the opportunities for us, we think, to reduce some of the friction in our system, reduce some of the unnecessary costs or payments that we make, and be able to provide health care more efficiently. You heard my colleague earlier, this definitely delays care for a lot of patients. And so we would prefer to see this go away.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
you.
Next up in favor? Just to get an idea, how many more in favor? Okay, remember, we just have 25 minutes, so keep it succinct, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Justin Alferman on behalf of SSM Health. We would like to go on record in support of the legislation and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, next up in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Adam Rabert here on behalf of the Missouri Podiatric Medical Association. Just want to go on record in support.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alex Tuttle, here today on behalf of University Health out of Kansas City and Hannibal Regional Health System. Want to go on record in support of this legislation.
Thank you. Questions for the witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Will Mars on behalf of Mercy Health System. Just want to go on record in support. Talking to our clinicians throughout the state, this is the #1 impediment to patient care. So we just thank the sponsor for bringing this forward.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, questions? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Good afternoon, Katie Gamble here on behalf of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Missouri Society of Anesthesiologists, the Missouri Ambulatory Surgery Center Association, New Liberty Hospital Corporation, Freeman Health System, and the Missouri Dermatological Association Society. Here in support of the legislation, I think the number of entities I just named tells you why.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Olivia Wilson testifying in support on behalf of the University of Missouri Healthcare System. For the University of Missouri Hospital, we employ over 50 individuals just to deal with the prior authorization process. That's significant because every day, I think in this building, we're talking about the rising costs of healthcare. It's things like the prior authorization process that very significantly contribute to that. Happy to take any questions.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Megan Howerton here on behalf of Mosaic Life Care and the Missouri Ambulance Association.
In favor of the
In support-
legislation?
Yeah, in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, next up in favor.
Garrett Webb here on behalf of the Missouri Psychological Association, Missouri Chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, Phoenix Home and Hospice Care, and the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. We know that especially our mental health providers and our pediatric providers are serving a very vulnerable population and should be dedicating their time to the care of those patients and not prior auth.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next up in favor.
Brian Bernskater here on behalf of the Missouri Academy of Family Physicians. Just want to go on record in support.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next up in favor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shannon Hawk on behalf of the Missouri Society of Eye Physicians and Surgeons. We'd like to go on record in favor of the bill.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor.
Hello, my name is Chandel Fibro. I am a registered nurse for Golden Valley Memorial Healthcare, where I work as the Director of Surgical Services. I'm speaking with you today as not only a healthcare leader, but somebody that has to deliver at times the bad news to patients and families when things don't go as planned. In policy discussions, we have to talk about prior authorization as a process, but for our patients, it's not a process, it's a moment. It's the phone call that we say to them, hey, we're still waiting. Oftentimes, we have cancellations and appointments that get delayed because of insurance authorizations. And we reviewed thousands of these of our own patient-specific examples. When we isolated insurance-related causes, the scope became very clear that cancer treatments are often delayed, imaging studies deferred despite medical necessity, surgeries postponed, and therapy interrupted mid-treatment. Most cases, care was not denied permanently. It was approved eventually, but only after weeks of delay. From a systems perspective, that's inefficiency. And from a patient perspective, it's waiting and often anxiety. I want to share a story with you, not because it's unique, but because it is painfully common. A patient diagnosed with prostate cancer was referred for radiation therapy and expedited authorization, one that was meant to be resolved within 72 hours. But the patient waited 26 days. 26 days of knowing that you have cancer, 26 days of waiting for permission to begin your treatment, and 26 days of uncertainty that no amount of reassurance can ease. During that time, our staff called the insurance company every single day. The care plan didn't change, the medical need did not change, only the waiting continued. Our CEO often sees this pattern repeated across our small rural system, not as an exception, but as a reality we work around every single day. In rural Missouri, healthcare already asks a lot of patients. We ask them to drive long. We ask them to have limited access to providers. They have few appointment options, but when authorization delays add weeks to that burden, some patients just simply give up. Not because the care isn't needed, but because the system becomes too heavy. And for rural hospitals, where staffing is limited, every delay pulls nurses and staff away from patient care into repeated follow-ups that do not improve outcomes, only frustration. This bill does not eliminate prior authorization. It does not take decision-making away from insurers. What it does is it honors the reality of ongoing medical necessary care. It gives patients continuity, it gives providers stability, and it gives the system a chance to work as it was intended by supporting care and not obstructing it. House Bill 3010 is about more than efficiency. It's about keeping patients at the center of our decisions and ensuring that when care is medically necessary, it's not lost in the space between paperwork and permission. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next up in favor. Anyone else in favor? We got through everybody except Arnie. And how many against, just to gauge my time? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dino, State Public Advocate. I submitted my online form in support on the Senate portal. Hopefully you received it. House Bill 3021 is finally about putting Missourians first. This is about Missourians' medical care and their medical choice. This is about patients' health, should be a priority over the insurance companies, and especially the insurance lobbyists and the insurance coalition, which I'm sure will be behind me. This bill, as I said at the beginning, finally puts Missourians first. This is a no-brainer. This should have been done decades ago. It's a shame that Missourians' health, Missourians' lives are put on the stake for profits of insurance companies. They should be ashamed of themselves that they put this predicament on our Missouri citizens. Missouri citizens get frustrated. I hear from citizens all the time in my community that have to go through this process of prior authorization. It's a shame of the hoops and the obstacles and the trauma that these insurance companies make these families and these patients go through. It needs to come to a stop right here today in this committee and onto the Senate floor and to the governor's desk. I highly support HB 3010. This is a great bill, and I applaud the sponsor. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. One final call for those in favor. Seeing none, anyone to testify in opposition of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 3010?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Hampton Williams for the Missouri Insurance Coalition, testifying in opposition to the bill. Throughout the session, we have analyzed this legislation in conjunction with the other 7 states that have created similar types of programs, and this legislation as drafted contains 6 provisions that are wholly unique and would make Missouri's gold carding system one of the most permissive in the nation, more than Texas, more than West Virginia, which their program blew a hole in their state public employee health plan budget when they authorized a 90% threshold, did not exclude pharmaceuticals, and within 1 year were exposed to an additional $52.5 million related to GLP-1 drug costs, which turned out to be 20% of their budget because providers were writing prescriptions outside of diagnoses that otherwise prior authorization would have been designed to check. Those terms which are included and those that we would like to have addressed do make substantive changes to this proposal versus those that have been authorized in other states. Pharmacy carve-outs, Louisiana, West Virginia, Wyoming, those do not include pharmacy. They might have a 90% threshold, but they don't require pharmacy coverage. Kentucky's program as well makes pharmacy coverage permissive. There are states like Arkansas and Texas which have components for pharmaceutical coverage, but they either have had guidelines around how those are applied, or they've had a multi-year program conducting market studies on the impact of inclusion. That's not present here. There's no minimum volume requirement, meaning that providers who have performed 2 requests, or pardon me, 2 utilizations can be approved for a gold card. Other states have adopted minimum utilization requirements. This is the only program that offers a blanket all services exemption. That doesn't exist anywhere else, meaning that in the aggregate, if a provider meets an average threshold, then they get gold carded for all services, even those that they otherwise would not meet a 90% threshold. Medicaid managed care is involved in this provision. Those are explicitly excluded in both Texas and Kentucky. There's no utilization spike trigger. That is that over the course of an evaluation period or term for the gold card, if utilizations increase dramatically, there's no ability for a carrier to actually review whether or not there is some issue going on with that provider. Those terms are almost universal in these other programs. Group gold carding. This one allows for the providers to elect to either be licensed at their individual level or at the provider level. And so what that would allow systems to do is to qualify providers within a system that would otherwise not be able to, on their individual basis, reach that qualification. Those programs are not present in other states. They're certainly not combined in one bill in other states. Our position throughout negotiations have been trying to get Missouri's gold carding program to resemble other types of programs. And the ultimate catch is this, and it's been identified here. Ultimately, this legislation only affects a portion of the marketplace. Those that would potentially be eligible would be those 28% of the fully insured marketplace. We've not really heard a discussion as to how many doctors or physicians or providers would be contemplated within that 90% threshold. Is it 50%? Is it 30%? Is it 80%? That number's not been provided, it's not been disclosed. Still, at the end of the day, even with this legislation to pass, providers will still need full prior authorization for Medicare, Medicaid Advantage, TRICARE, self-funded ERISA plans. So the administrative burden arguments that we've heard, they won't be completely removed. It's true that there might be fewer plans, but that would also be true if a 93% threshold were adopted as opposed to a 90. Outside of the gold carding portion, on the API portions of the bill, there are several concerns that are new this year. One has to do with the deemed admitted prior authorization language. There are 4 terms. I've sent a letter to the committee which outlines this, where basically Missouri has one of the shortest 36-hour windows to respond to a prior authorization. This proposal would then require that if a prior authorization is not granted or reviewed within that period of time, that it would be deemed admitted. This legislation would also require that deemed admitted would be good for a period of at least 6 months. And then the legislation continues under the gold carding section to identify that any prior authorization that has been approved would not be subject to any subsequent review. That type of mechanism does not exist in any other one of these gold carding sections, gold card exemption programs in other states. The legislation also adopts an aggressive continuation timeline that well exceeds any federal standards. So, again, our ultimate goal is we're glad to continue to work with both the sponsor and as well as the proponents of this bill. Ultimately, I think that if the program can resemble what has been accomplished in other states, that is something that we can continue to work towards. Again, happy to continue to work with folks on this issue. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator McCreary.
So I keep hearing mention of the Kentucky model or the Kentucky plan. What is it about that plan that your side thinks would work for the state of Missouri?
So first off, it has to do with the effective percentage threshold itself, which is at 93%. Second, it has a permissive use on pharmaceuticals. And so what it would allow carriers to do is at their election they can design a program which would allow for some type of gold carding process for that, but it does not mandate that. Now, I will say that
so for certain drugs or all of them, or
it would leave it up for the carriers
okay.
to make a determination on how they design those programs. But with respect to the pharmaceutical coverage, and I'll say that legislation, it is a balanced bill in that there are other determinations on the reporting elements on what prior authorization is used for that, again, my side has had some heartburn on in the past, but as a complete package, I think that is ultimately something that can be implemented by our members without a concern, which would still allow for the high-performing providers to meet a reasonable threshold, but still not have some type of unanticipated or unexpected exposure, particularly with respect to the pharmaceutical market.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up in opposition.
Thank you.
We have about 5-ish minutes left.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David Willis here on behalf of the Missouri Health Plan Association, unfortunately here to testify against this bill. We've been having this conversation on this bill for a number of years now. I'll start by saying we like gold carding programs. A lot of our plans use them and set up those programs, use to use both here in Missouri and in other markets around the country. United Health just rolled out yesterday a rollback of prior authorizations for almost all of their procedures at rural hospitals. This is an evolving landscape with things moving. The feds are working on programs to require a lot of these prior authorizations to be instantaneous, so a provider gets that answer very quickly. Our opposition surrounds putting that threshold, that mandate in state statute, and has been mentioned, I think, by folks from both sides. The threshold is by far the biggest sticking point here. A large number of our providers fall right in that 88 to 92% range, and we believe, if we're giving a gold card to high-performing providers, they should truly be high-performing providers and not fall somewhere in the average. The inclusion of Medicaid obviously is tricky for us as well from the cost side. We went and did an analysis of what would this have cost in the last fiscal year, assuming no other provider changes, just applying it, looking in reverse. And the cost to the state's Medicaid program would be between $69 and $93 million, again, assuming no other changes. I'll leave my testimony there. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Senator McCreary?
I just want to talk to you after about why UHC did it for rural and not for other customers, but we can do that later. So.
Happy to.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in opposition.
Madam Chair, Shannon Cooper today representing America's Health Insurance Plans, and I'll be pretty brief. My previous two witnesses did a good job kind of explaining where we're at in the process. And I'd agree the two sticking points are the 93% as well as the pharmaceutical issue. We started out at 95 when we started entertaining this idea. We've moved down to 93, and the other side's still stuck at 90 where they started with. So obviously there's an issue. No prior auth on pharmaceuticals is just a non-starter for many of our members. It's the second largest cost driver in health plans today, and without us having some oversight on those. And I'm not breaking any HIPAA laws, but I'm going to give you a real life example because we've had a few of those told today about some pharmaceuticals. And somebody I know very well that I actually live with was prescribed some medication last week, and lo and behold, it was kicked out when she went to pick it up because the prior authorization denied that medicine. As you can imagine, she was very frustrated and vented with me, and I gave her a few questions to ask the pharmacist, and she called back, and after a couple hours, he called back and said, hey, you can come get your medication. And lo and behold, you know what happened? The hospital, the medical assistant put the wrong CPC code in there so that when it went through the insurance company's process, it said, hold on, you were seen for this was the diagnosis. It does not match that medication whatsoever. So they said, let's stop and make sure you're getting what you need. And that's the whole idea behind prior authorization. And that's why the employers that we work for use it to make sure that you're getting the most appropriate services at the most appropriate location. And in the case of the pharmaceuticals, a lot of times it's not about the price of the drugs, but it's about the safety of those issues. Some of the most addictive and dangerous drugs out there cost a few cents a pill, and some of the most expensive items that pharmaceuticals out there are hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're for one specific use that can't be abused or sold on the black market. So I think that's why we're dug in that the pharmaceuticals just cannot be included with that. At the national level right now this year, through a voluntary program with the Medical Society and many of our health insurance plans where we're using new computer technology, we've seen a decrease in 2026 of 11% in prior authorization procedures. That equates to about 6.5 million services this year alone that were not prior authorized. So as an industry, we have taken great steps forward. I think this is the way. I think computer technology and AI is going to make this better as we go down the road. But we've got to get to a point where everybody is a partner in this. We've got to stop the days of phone calls and faxing in orders. We've got to get online and make sure that everybody's doing this. With that, Madam Chair, I can see your frustration. I'll stop talking.
Questions for this witness? Well, they just told me they're going to start ringing the bells. So, thank you for testimony.
Thank you very
Seeing no
much.
questions, anyone else to testify in opposition? Seeing none, anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none, our bill sponsor had to go vote, I think, so this will conclude the hearing on House Committee Substitute for House Bill 3010, and we are adjourned.